Welcome to Buck in the News, presented by the Pewtercast. This is our Buck in the News show. This is our weekend wrap-up show with all the headlines and everything we've not had a chance to talk about over the course of the week just yet. We'll also be taking a look at transactions and injury reports as we head into the Miami game this weekend, where our Buccaneers will be taking on the Miami Dolphins, a game they should have played in week one, but due to Hurricane Irma, it got flexed to this, which should have been their bye week. I am Brent Allen, your host. With me, as always, is Ren Daxt. Ren, how are we doing tonight, buddy?
Doing well, doing good. We cannot bury the lead. Huge news and disturbing news coming out of One Buc place today with, of course, I'm talking about Vernon Hargreaves is going to be out for the Dolphins game.
That is disturbing and bone-chilling, and we'll talk about that because we've got some transactions that'll coincide with that, I think. Maybe, possibly. Yeah, there's at least one. Try to bolster that cornerback position, but we'll get there. Again, this is that show where, we do two that are earlier. They're kind of game reviews. We're talking about that. This one, we wait till the end of the week. All the headlines are out. All the news is done. The only thing that's left for the Bucs to do is to go out and play a game and hopefully to win this game. And so this is where we'll get the chance to look back over the course of the week and see what's going on. This will be your Saturday morning wrap up for the Buccaneers. So with that, Ren, we always start with transactions. So let's get to that as we head towards this big breaking news, as you say, of Vernon Hargreaves III being out. No, we will get to the big news. Everybody, I'm sure, knows what that is.
Okay, good. I'm like, is he just not going to acknowledge my joke at all?
No, we will absolutely get to the big news, which everybody probably knows, having to do with our quarterback, Jameis Winston. But all in due time, my friend, all in due time. Transactions reports. There was a couple of things that happened. We said last week, no big surprises here. Freddie Martino was actually waived at the beginning of this week. They signed him off the practice squad last week to fill in for Mike Evans, who was suspended. Mike Evans comes back off suspension, so he immediately gets waived. He makes his way through waivers, and they re-signed him to the practice squad. They also, earlier this week, released from the practice squad a cornerback named David Rivers and signed a cornerback to the practice squad, Senquez Golson. Now, this guy's got I saw, Ren, you tweeted about this guy saying, this could be a feather in the cap of Jason Light. Why don't you explain that for us?
Are we really going to bury the lead and not talk about Jameis till like halfway through?
We can.
Well,
you want to go ahead and talk about Jameis now?
I think that's why everyone's tuning into this.
All right.
You can't. I mean, it's like journalism 101. Don't bury the lead. Not like we're journalists, but we play one on the internet.
We pretend to be one. I don't know. We've been told that we're ones. All right, fine. All right, let's skip ahead. It's the big thing that happened. Comes out earlier today. A female Uber driver out of Arizona, I think Scottsdale, Arizona, has said she says that she was inappropriately groped in the crotch area, to be specific.
That's what I've heard as well.
A couple of years ago. I've seen so many headlines where it says that she says that Jameis Winston was the actual person who did it. Mm-hmm. There are other headlines that say she doesn't know who did it because apparently there was a group of people in the car. She doesn't know who did it. It was just that Jameis Winston's account was used to hail this Uber ride.
Yeah, it seems the only thing we know for sure is that Jameis was in the car and that he paid for the ride.
Right.
And he was not the only one in the car with the driver.
Right. And the driver doesn't even really know who this is. Driver says she was inappropriately touched. She didn't report it. She reported it, I think, to Uber at the time, but never filed a police report because she didn't want to go through all the things that happen with that kind of that kind of stuff. Right. So now the NFL has launched an investigation. The NFL has been very, very clear. This is just a fact-finding point right now. Jameis is not suspended. Jameis is not on the commissioner's exempt list. There is nothing that is happening to Jameis right now. Jameis, his agent immediately came out and said they categorically deny this. Jameis himself issued a statement. It was a very prepared statement, but he fully denies it and says that it was not him. He actually says he wasn't even sitting in the seat, like the passenger seat. He would have been, I guess, in the back seat. But he says it wasn't me. I did not. That was not him. And he denies it, flat out denies it, and comes out right, attacks it right away. The Buccaneers issue a statement saying that they're fully supportive of the NFL's investigation into this whole deal. And that's pretty much where we are. Of course, in today's climate with many celebrities getting outed for sexual harassment and sexual assault,
bad week.
Bad week. Yeah, real
bad week for this to be released for Jameis.
Yeah, especially given some of Jameis's past and other allegations that he has faced. Ren, this is that I want to say something, but I don't, but I do, but I don't. That's what that sound always means for me. So Ren, I'm gonna let you tackle this one first. Go ahead, my friend.
Are you shrinking? Are you a shrinking violet in front of the PC police?
No,
Or the social justice warriors making you cower in your boots? Well, here's what it is for me. Basically, you described exactly where we are right here. Obviously, with the rape allegations in college, and then while those were going on, Jameis stood up, I believe, in the cafeteria at Florida State, and almost ironically enough, sang a lyric to the song that was just about verbatim for what happened in the Uber car. Allegedly happened in the Uber car. So it does shine a, Jameis Winston's detractors are going to automatically jump to this guy's guilty, which
they already are.
Well, that's okay. Already are. And and it's not, I mean, it's unfair judiciously, at least by the law. But, having your own opinion about it, it's hard to defend people jumping on him and, claiming that he did it because of his past, some of his past behaviors. It was, like you said, in Jameis' statement that it released through Instagram, it was almost 2 years ago. So obviously it was a while ago. What I personally think what happened is someone at BuzzFeed figured out that Jameis Winston is no longer allowed to get an Uber and then started doing some digging. I don't think, from what I've read and from what I've known, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the female Uber driver, this lady, is looking for anything. I think something happened. Yeah. And
a lot of people are saying, she just wants money. No, this is a very old thing that some TMZ, BuzzFeed, they've dug up. I know it's BuzzFeed, but it's that
journalism tabloid,
exactly.
TV / magazine.
Yeah. People are trying to dig up whatever they can on anybody, without
anything
regard
to get clicks.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it's not true or not.
Exactly. 100%. And this puts me personally, okay? I don't want to speak for all Bucs fans out there. I will say this puts me personally in a very weird spot. Because I have another podcast, the Brent Allen Live, the podcast, where we talk about issues like this. This isn't a PC police thing. It's just we talk about issues like this. We've tackled these kinds of issues before. So I certainly have a stance that I take when it comes to stuff like this. And for the first time, though, since all of these, the Kevin Spacey thing and the Louis C.K. thing, and even Donald Trump and some of his past stuff, and even
Al Franken just came out.
Al Franken, Bill Cosby from a couple of years ago, and that whole thing reared its ugly head. This is the first time that it's been a celebrity that I personally care about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's the first time where I don't want to say that I care about the situation, because I do care about the whole situation. I care about the situations that have been happening. This is the first time that I find myself in a spot where I really.
It can affect you personally almost.
It can. And not only do I not want to believe it, I really don't believe this one. You know, like this one I just don't. And in a time where, you know, our country is founded on the principle that people are innocent until proven guilty. That is one of our founding principles. Like from the get-go. That was one of the atrocities that was the colonists were bearing under British rule, and that was one of the things that they changed immediately. However, as you mentioned a little bit, the court of public opinion, though, is not so does not have that same principle that it operates out of.
Limitations.
Exactly. You know, it really doesn't. And this issue of sexual assault and sexual harassment is so important and is so destructive that what we can't do is we can't just wipe away whenever somebody claims it, because that's how it stayed hidden. That's the seedy underbelly for so long. Powerful men and women, but mostly men, vast majority are men, have wielded and used their power to wash this away, to not let it be something that's coming to affect them. And, you know, in 2017, this is starting to actually come back and bite these guys in the butt, as it should. For the most part, not everybody, but for the most part. So the fact that this is getting called up, like I can't sit here and just say, she's full of it and let's forget about it and go back to playing football because he's my quarterback and I don't want to believe that about my quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, I can't do that. Yet at the same time, I am really sitting back going, whoa. First of all, everything I said, from everything that I have read, she has not said Jameis Winston did this to me.
Right.
She has said somebody did this to me. I'm not sure who it is. The headlines that people in the media are writing, particularly BuzzFeed, are saying Jameis Winston is allegedly been accused of doing this. And those are two very different things. And you know, I call shame on the media people who are saying it that way. If that's not what actually is being said. Now, I may not have read all the things. She may have actually said that it was him. Everything I've read does not say where she says it was actually him. But it just puts us in a very weird spot. But as Bucs fans, I'll tell you this, Ren, hashtag I'm with 3. You know, I until proven guilty on this one, everything just runs up the false pole on this one. And unfortunately, there are people who have already passed their judgment. No matter what comes out of the NFL's investigation or other people's investigation, Jameis is just going to be guilty, and already is.
Right. Yeah, this is sort of a double-edged sword. The reason we wait till Friday night, the injury reports are out, all the pressers are done, to do this show is so all the things that pop up during the week. What we started with, and of course we'll go back to, is like the cornerback signing. We'll get to the Reedy Martino thing. And this is why we do it Friday, so we have this time to talk about it. Unfortunately, this broke today.
Yeah,
and
like a couple hours ago.
Yeah, and it's extreme. It's still
this. Yeah,
it's still an extremely fluid situation. So we really can't come up with solutions yet, or what it's going to mean for Jameis Winston going forward, because we're not even sure what the facts are yet. And as you said, the NFL's just started this fact-finding mission. And I'm with you. Everything that I've seen, from verified sources, like, let's face it, I get all my news on Twitter now. Like that's where I get my news from. So all blue checks and unblue checks, everything I've read, it started out, like you said, Jameis Winston's been accused of sexual assault. That's what I woke up to this morning to my phone. Someone followed me, then tweeted at me, Rendax, Jameis Winston's been charged with sexual assault. And then a little bit later, the Peter cast comes through. What you tweeted out, hey, it's going to make it interesting for Buck in the news coming up.
Right.
So I'm scanning Twitter, and everything was like, Jameis groped this lady. And then later it's like, Jameis grabbed this lady in the crotch. And then a little bit later it's like, oh, well, there's other people there. And then it was like, well, she can't say that was there. The reason it's Jameis's name is being brought into it is because he's the one who paid for the ride. Like he used the app. I'm Jameis Winston. I need an Uber. And, him and at least one other person, I don't know the amount of people, got in this car. And according to the lady which I'm not going to say I don't believe her, according to the lady, someone grabbed her at one point during the ride in the crotch area. Maybe she blew it off. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I think personally that she felt that she had to report it because think about if she didn't report it and something happened in the future down the line with Uber. I think she was protecting, the drivers, female drivers, all that type of thing. And I believe that's probably company policy. And then you see that Uber contacted him and he denied it. And they're like, well, I understand that, but we're spending your account anyway. And that's, as far as it went. So right now I think it's very volatile and explosive. If he did do it, obviously there's going to have to be some sort of, he's going to have to stand out in front of the media, in front of everybody and the Tampa Bay fans and, America and talk about what happened. Obviously he'll do an apology. But if he, I think it's going to be very hard to prove at this point.
Sure.
And that's sort of like the bottom line. Like he's not even denying it didn't happen. He's denying that it wasn't him. He was like, I was there. It wasn't me. I've also seen a few tweets about people saying shame on Jameis for not reporting it immediately. And you got to sort of understand the situation. It's not like they put an address to an empty warehouse district in Arizona, and started grabbing all over this girl. It was maybe they get in the car like, oh, you're pretty, honk, honk on the boob. That's how I thought it went down when I first started reading it until I read about the crotch. If she didn't feel it was bad enough to report it to police, then, I don't think anybody, male or female, is going to rat out their friend for a grope on a male or female. So I think everyone should sort of slow down on that. You have your opinions. It's easy to look, on the other side of the glass and see it and be like, you should report on, you should tell on your friend about that. This is bad behavior. Yes, it's bad behavior. Should it happen? Absolutely not. But it does happen. And when we're talking about sexual assault, this is about as minor as it can get. The only reason it became sexual assault is because where she was grabbed. If it was like in the rib cage, quote unquote, yeah, that's technically assault on the shoulder, technically assault.
Right.
But where it was, it makes it sexual assault, which makes it so much more of, this firestorm and people want to talk about it. People want to get outraged about it. But I'm telling you, you can think about me, and I'm talking to the listeners here any way you want to. If I'm like out in Arizona and we're piloting an Uber and one of my friends grabs the Uber driver by the crotch and, and says something inappropriate, I'm not going to call the cops on him. Am I going to be like, hey, Brian, Billy, Tommy,
stop that.
Yeah, hey, don't do that, dude. That's really uncool. Ma'am, I apologize. Do you want us to get out? Or can you just take us where it is, water under the bridge, whatever. And if she wanted to call the cops, I might run. I might run.
Right.
And because that's a big allegation for the infraction of it. It's like jaywalking is a misdemeanor. It's not, but let's see. Failure to pay the bill. Like if you run out of your tab, like, you've had some drinks, you're out with your friends in your early 20s, you're at, Denny's, IHOP, and you think it's hilarious and you run out on your tab, that's a felony. That's not the same as, getting busted for, I don't know how many DUIs it takes it to be a felony. I think it's your third, fourth, something like that. Like getting caught for your third DUI is not the same thing as running out on your, your pancakes at IHOP. Should either of them happen? Absolutely not. But you just got to kind of put it in perspective. And I'm like I said, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm not trying to say she overreacted because I don't think she wanted this at all. You know, she took it as far as she thought was needed, as in protecting future Uber drivers. The only information she had was Jameis Winston. She didn't have the names of the other people in the car. So that's all she could do. And she did her diligence as you know, basically a citizen and an employee of Uber.
And Uber, by the way. So I'm looking at Jameis Winston's his statement. Okay.
Right.
And here's what he says. I am addressing, he says, at the time of the alleged incident, I denied the allegations to Uber, which tells me she reported the incident to Uber. Okay.
Uber called him.
Uber called him and said, "What's up?" And he said, "No, I didn't do it." And it says they still suspended his account from then. Now, at that point, Uber did not file police charges. You know, she said she didn't want to file police charges, so I'm sure Uber kind of went with her on that, right?
Yeah. So at that point, it's over.
And at that point, it's over. It's you know, it's done. Should Uber have gone on and done something? Maybe. You know, maybe that's a bigger discussion than a football podcast.
That's why I think that's why I think the difference is, you know, and I don't, you know, since it does have the word sexual assault in it, I'm not trying to, you know, saying she's crying wolf or downplay it or like, hey, boys will be boys. Yeah, it's no big deal. But as far as the vastness of what sexual assault is, it is sort of like the jaywalking of sexual assaults. You know, it's yes, it should never happen. But it's not the lady's not scarred for life over it. You know, I mean, there have been, I don't want to say plenty of time, but there have been times, you know, I went to college for, you know, 5 years. Sorry. Took me a little longer. And there were times at bars, you know, where girls would grab my face and try to make out with me. And, you know, they were, you know, way up in the cocktail scale than I was. And I was like, nope, thanks. You know, should I like call the cops? Because that's sexual assault, you know? So I'm not trying to make light of it, but from what I'm seeing on Twitter, from what I heard on Sports Talk Radio today, I think everyone's really overreacting to it. And in the end, honestly, what I think is going to happen is probably absolutely nothing because you can't prove anything. Like there's no cameras. You can't prove it. It's going to be, in the end, if push comes to shove, and I hope it doesn't. I really don't think it does. It's going to be the female Uber driver's word against Jameis Winston and whoever else was in that car with him, at least another person, probably two. So now it's like 3-on-1 or at least 2-on-1. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but I just think it's being blown way out of proportion. And in the end, I don't think it's going to amount to a bunch of nothing, honestly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And this is one of those situations that, you know, at the end of the day it's going to kind of disappear into the ether, except for the damage to her reputation.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's because you said you can't prove this one way or the other. Jameis has come out and categorically denied it. So unless he changes his tune saying, yeah, actually it was me, which probably will not happen. You know, and unless she comes out with something of a harder charge of, yes, it was specifically him and this is what happened and can give us any sort of more detail on it to flesh that out. It's just going to be, hey, this incident happened and it's just going to be tried in the court of public opinion. You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
So that said, as I've seen the facts as they exist right now, which is just a few hours, and by facts I mean just this version of the story versus that version of the story.
They could change.
And they could change, but as it is right now, it doesn't. It doesn't appear that this was actually something that he did. And you know, and I'm looking. I have Twitter pulled up right now. There is a female Bucs fan that we interact with a lot on the podcast. Has never been a guest on the show, so let me just clear that. But this female, and she says, I find it disturbing how many men are already ready to call her a liar when they have no idea who she is. Or who's telling the truth yet? No wonder women are so scared to come forward. It's a shame. That goes to my exact point. That's where it puts me in such this weird spot. But all of that said,
because you don't want to be, hey, this is nothing, blow it off.
Exactly.
But in the end, it's probably, and like I said, I'm not calling her a liar either. It's just, I think it was something that happened that shouldn't have happened, and she took the appropriate measures to protect herself and others that work for a company in the future. And then somebody from BuzzFeed just stumbled up across it, did some digging, and was like, hey, Jameis Winston suspended from Uber for sexual assault.
Right. So here's what I'll say for me, and people can do whatever. For me, I'm going to watch all of the headlines and everything that's going to come out over the next couple of days, especially probably the next couple of weeks, and I'm gonna look at them with a very critical eye. I tend to, as it is right now, believe Jameis, and it's, as you said, I like what you said. It's not that I don't believe her, because I think she's actually telling the truth. It's the media, and I hate to sound like that guy of all the media is bad, but the media is spinning this out of control. Look at the headlines and see if the headlines
for clicks.
Exactly. And I would tell people out there to remember that we do live in a society that is innocent until proven guilty. This is a very serious issue, and by no means do we want to sweep sexual assault under the rug, and it's never okay for that to happen. And it's one of these weird things where I think all of these truths exist at the same time, but yeah, I am going to be wary of a lot of these, particularly the headlines, like once you open it up and you read it, you get more, but to just go off what the headline says, I can't do that.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Let's see here. Another one. The Uber driver is unable to identify the specific individual who allegedly touched her inappropriately. The only reason Jameis's name is being dragged into this is because his account was used to call the ride.
Right. And that doesn't clear him either.
No, it doesn't.
Let's be. But
exactly.
But the headlines are, Jameis Winston being investigated by the NFL for sexual assault, and then you start getting into it. It's like, well, there's more people there. She doesn't know who grabbed him or grabbed her. And like I said, she did what she thought was enough. If she felt more scared or more threatened, if it wasn't more of, and I don't want to say like alcohol or drugs were involved, but if it wasn't like, wow, oh my God, you're so hot, honk, honk, really stupid, inappropriate. No, you can't do that. But there's a difference, like I said, of, oh my God, I love you, grab, than it is to, be more aggressive in your tone. Or like I went to the absurdium with, they went, hey, go to this address and it's some abandoned warehouse district, and they have their way with the driver. And obviously that didn't happen. So,
right. Okay. So like here to this point, this is a report, Rick Stroud, this is on his Twitter account. Okay. He says, report, the NFL is investigating Jameis Winston for allegedly groping an Uber driver. Right. Now, I respect Rick Stroud. I really do. I respect his journalistic integrity. And this is what the NFL is investigating Jameis for. They're investigating him. The only problem I would have with this, and I know that word economy is a thing for them, but the NFL is investigating to see if Jameis Winston groped this Uber driver. They're not investigating him because he groped the Uber. That's the way this kind of reads to me. They're investigating him before or because he allegedly groped an Uber driver. No. They're investigating to see if he was the one who did it. That's what I mean when I say just read these headlines, particularly if you're just going to read the tweet or just the headline. Read it carefully because that's not the situation. At least it's not until new evidence comes to light.
Right.
So, okay. Do we have anything else to say on Jameis, or can we go back to talking about the transactions report?
I can't believe you tried to bury that. I'm like,
it just wasn't in order.
I'm thinking in my head. I'm going. People are like turning off the podcast right now because we're talking about some cornerback the
Or they're hitting
Steelers picked
fast
2
forward,
years ago.
plus 15 seconds, plus 15 seconds, plus 15 seconds, plus 15 seconds.
Come on now, let's get to it. Let's get to the meat. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
I think we've said everything, or I've said everything that I guess I wanted to say. Yeah, so
all right.
Let's move on. Transactions, you say?
Hashtag I'm with 3. Transactions. Did you know that Freddie Martino got waived earlier this week? Who would have guessed? And then he was immediately re-signed to the practice squad once he cleared waivers. And they also released later that day a cornerback from the practice squad, David Rivers. Never heard a thing about this guy, but they signed Senquez Golson. Now, Ren, you tweeted, as I stated before we went to the lead, you tweeted earlier that this has the potential to be a feather in the cap of Jason Light.
Correct.
Care to explain?
Well, he's a possibly really good cornerback. The Steelers drafted him. He's to
second round, right?
Second round. He's just been really had terrible luck with injuries. Almost so many. It's like, you don't like to tell guys, put labels on people that are injury prone. Usually it's just bad luck, It's sort of the label Jerry McCoy got because his first 2 years he was with the Buccaneers. He missed partial games, parts of the season because, like a shoulder and a bicep or something. It was both. It was an arm. This guy's supposed to be the big, the next Warren Sapp type of deal, but he can't stay on the field, and you sort of get that label. He has outlived that. This guy has not. I think it was a shoulder his first year, put him on IR, so he missed his whole rookie year. Then his second year, it was a foot, got put on IR, missed that whole year, and then this year, I think it was a foot again where he missed
but it was
all
like the other foot.
Yeah, like he missed all. It was just he missed all of preseason camp, training camp with the Steelers, and on the last cut, which is, I guess it's not quite as dramatic as it used to be since there's only 2 cuts instead of 3. But on the last cut, they let him go, and I'm assuming now he's healthy. I'm assuming it took him this long to get healthy, and like I said, there could be a feather in Jason Light's cap because this kid's an All-American from Ole Miss, a second-round draft choice from a team who has been actively looking for secondary help all year long. I mean, they got Joe Hayden when the Browns – I'm not sure if that was a trade. The Browns let him go. They got J.J. Wilcox. Did we trade J.J. Wilcox or we release him? I think we traded him.
Yeah, we traded him for a late-round draft pick, I think.
Yeah, so the Steelers got J.J. Wilcox. It was rumored he was in the T.J. War sort of mini bidding war that we went out on. So it just is a team that's been actively looking for cornerbacks. You might say, well, then why they let go of this guy? Because he hasn't played it down the NFL, and it was starting his third year, and they might have had to put him on IR again. Sometimes, like Jason Light says, you got to fish or cut bait. If this kid turns out to be healthy, he can be somebody that actually is a practice squad signing off the street that you want to keep an eye on because, like I said in the tweet, he has the pedigree. He's an All-American second-round draft choice, and he, like I said before, he went to Ole Miss. That's where he went to college.
Right. So this is a guy that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on in the coming weeks to see if he gets elevated to the regular squad. Certainly we could see that happening because, as we'll mention here, we actually already talked about it. VH3 with a hamstring injury does look like he is going to be out for an indeterminate amount of time. So we certainly have an open spot for a cornerback on our active roster. I think just as soon as he gets into the building and familiar enough with everything that they can put him out there and play, would probably, it'd be something interesting to see in coming weeks. So with that, they also released from the, let me say this. They also released a defensive end, Patrick Gamble, off the practice squad, who signed with the team a couple weeks ago. Which leaves them, down a spot. They signed earlier today, the Buccaneers promoted Freddie Martino once again back to the active roster, which I'm not sure why they felt the need to bring Freddie Martino back. because there's nothing that would indicate we need more wide receiver, help. But they waived Bernard Reedy,
right,
as a wide receiver. So that, just kind of a 1-for-1. Presumably with Bernard Reedy, he'll clear waivers and we'll have him back on the practice squad, which still, by my count, puts us down one person on the practice squad. Puts us at 9 as opposed to 10. So we'll see what happens there. My count might be off, but anyway, what do you make of this whole thing? Waiving Bernard Reedy, who, by the way, had a really nice return in this last game against the Jets, and has been playing fairly decently as a punt returner all season. All of a sudden, without warning, without any rhyme or reason, seemingly they released him, or waived him anyway, to bust him back down to the practice squad and replaced him with Freddie Martino.
I think it's just they like Martino's skill set better than Reedy. Yes, Bernard Reedy has been, he hasn't done a terrible job. He had a good punt return this week. Ironically enough, Freddie Martino missed the block that, could have sprung him. If he had his, he was sort of looking back to see where Bernard was instead of looking at the guy to block. He should have been blocking. I just think they like his skill set better. We have Adam Humphries, who Trevor Sikkema tweeted out, said he was the only guy taking punts at practice today besides Reedy. So
yeah.
And most people, if you follow the Bucs closely enough, knew that Adam Humphries was probably going to be the guy who's going to start taking punts.
Yeah.
And they've tried to get Reedy involved in the offense. How many times have they given him that jet sweep, which a lot of Bucs fans, including myself, have really would like to see that go to Deshaun Jackson. So his usefulness on the team offensively, I don't think they've thrown to him at all. Like maybe one screen play, but nothing down the field. So he's not getting on the field.
Right.
And if you have a guy who is getting on the field that can do just as good or a better job at punt returning, and you've tried to get him involved in the offense, a la these jet sweeps, and most of them, if not all of them, have gone for, maybe 2 yards. They haven't been, these surprise plays that have gone for 7-8 yards or picked up a first down, like, 2nd and 6 and gets 11, things like that. Definitely no, what do they call them? Explosives.
Sure.
So if you've been trying to find a fit for this guy in your offense and you can't do it, and now all he's really doing is taking up a roster spot and returning kicks, well, that it's time to make a change.
And he's not necessarily doing better than Adam Humphries did last year.
Yeah,
when Humphries was actually the guy who was returning kicks.
Yeah, so. It's not. He definitely didn't make himself invaluable in the kick return game. But it's very hard nowadays because most punters, back when we were growing up watching football, punters kicked the ball as far as they could.
Yeah.
They're going to outkick the coverage. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. Like they do not like. The punters can kick the ball more than like 45, 46 yards. They just do that so there's zero return. Just take any chance of a return and getting a touchdown just off the table, which most teams, try to do. So Martino's bigger. He's stronger. They both were with Cutter and Mike Smith in Atlanta. And I think it's just sort of a, moving forward in that fifth receiver spot. I think the team, if you take out the kick returning, the punt returning, I think the team likes Martino's skill set better offensively, can do more things for them than Reedy does. And it was just a matter of like, hey, you're both, I don't know. You're both flawed diamonds. I don't know. Yeah. I just like,
I mean, it seems to me on a lot of this, it's not just their offensive skill set, but it's also their special teams, because this far into the depth chart, they're not looking to these guys for a lot of offensive firepower, right? No. And we're not hurting at the wide receiver position right now. We don't have a bunch of guys out on injury. In fact, we don't have anybody out on injury with wide receiver position. So you have Mike Evans and you have Deshaun Jackson and you have Adam Humphries,
Godwin, and you
have Chris Godwin. And truthfully, let's call for. Chris Godwin gets elevated to the number one receiver spot when Mike Evans goes goes down, not Adam Humphries. Okay, so realistically, in a depth chart, you've got to think that Chris Godwin is ahead of Humphries. And I know that they're kind of doing different things, right? Like Humphries is playing a very specific spot, but still, with how it goes, you're putting Adam Humphries still down that far on the depth chart. He's got to start contributing more on special teams, doesn't he? In order to make himself valuable to this team. And where he was returning punts last year, as you said, there's no reason to have somebody who's taking up a spot for special teams to return punts. I've got to believe that a lot of that is also they like better with what they see in Freddie Martino in other
special team
roles, especially with Vernon Hargreaves. And I believe Vernon Hargreaves did some, like Freddie Martino might be filling in for some of the places where Vernon was on special teams, I think.
Or they moved a guy over to what Vernon was doing.
Yeah, something of that nature. I just feel like this has to do with more. Bernard Reedy was specialized with what he was doing on special teams, whereas Freddie Martino might give them a little more flexibility. And they have Adam Humphries that they're really, let's face it, 9 games in, they haven't really done a lot with Adam Humphries this season.
Mm-mm.
So he's got to start contributing on special teams too. It makes sense. You hate it because Bernard Reedy had a great return this past game. But outside of that, he's not been super stellar. He's not been bad. By no means can we say he's been bad. But, yeah, I get it. I really get it. So Hump will be returning punts. It looks like Ryan Smith most likely will be returning kicks. And it'll be Ryan Smith or Justin Evans. Those are the 2 guys listed as the backups on the roster. So that'll be something to see, come this game. We'll be on the lookout for those guys. That kind of completes the transactions report that we have for this week. Yeah. We already talked about Jameis and at some length. And let's see here. Just a couple others. It was kind of a slow news week. We already talked about Vernon Hargreaves is out for an indeterminate.
Wasn't a slow news week. It was just the press conferences were kind of boring.
The press conferences were, there wasn't much.
I mean, you pick up a second future, a former second round draft pick cornerback. And you cut your punt returner and your quarterback's under NFL investigation. I don't call that a slow news.
Okay, fine.
There's nothing going on at $1 this week,
right? But I mean, like a couple of things. So, Gerald McCoy, we talked about this during the Final Thought show. Gerald talked about this he was on the radio earlier this week on Monday. And he said he was sending it up to the NFL to get one of the sacks that I think got assigned to Robert Ayers, saying, no, that was actually me. And that was successful. Yeah. They took it away from Robert Ayers and gave it to Gerald McCoy. So Gerald McCoy actually had 2 sacks in this last game.
Deuces.
Yep. Good for him. The other big
I wonder how that dynamic is. Does Gerald McCoy go up to Robert Ayers and
hey, yo, man,
does he tell him beforehand? Or even beforehand, hey, I know you got credit with that sack, but I sent a tape in to the NFL offices to see if I could have it. Are you okay with that?
He's like that guy in Office Space. He's like, so if I could just have your sack by lunch, that sounds dirty. Whatever. That'd be great.
So I don't know. I just would like to see that. I'm sure there was a conversation, but I'd like to see that. Mm-hmm. Gerald McCoy going over to Robert Ayers and telling him that he's actively campaigning to take a sack away from him.
Mm-hmm. You see Gerald McCoy looking at Robert Ayers, go, "Come at me, bro. Come at me."
Right.
And then VH3 being out. I mean, what do we really say about that? We've got JV and Elliott. VH3 has been relegated to a nickel spot.
Well, McLean's back.
And McLean's back, yeah.
So I guess that's the thing to say about it. It would have been interesting to see if they knocked Ryan Smith off the field, and if it was Grimes and McLean,
right,
and then they played JV and Elliott in the slot, or they well, I guess they're still going to do that.
That probably still could be. Or if they want to stick with Ryan Smith, does Bobby McLean go to nickel? Does he play nickel? I mean, I guess he could.
He started nickel. He got that pick 6 at Chicago in nickel.
I mean,
when it was Vernon and Grimes starting, Bobby McLean was the starting nickel.
I mean, I think it just depends on how much they like Ryan Smith at that left cornerback position. They're looking at Justin Evans going, hey, he's doing really well. They're leaving him in basically full-time at safety now. If they've had Ryan Smith there for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. It just depends on how much they like him over there, if they leave him there or if they move him out and put McClain in there. So that's, but Vernon moving
you have a
out
choice.
opens up a spot now,
But they have a choice they can get Bobby Mack on the field either way.
Right.
Like if they can put him outside and sit Ryan Smith, or they can put him at nickel and have Ryan Smith. So Bobby Mack's going to play.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, do they think he's better outside corner than Ryan Smith, or not?
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not, he's going to play nickel because he's ahead of Javian Elliott. That's going to be interesting. Now,
yeah. So something to be on the lookout.
How good is Ryan Smith right now?
And that'll be something. So be on the lookout, because if we still see Ryan Smith at that left cornerback position, that should tell us that the Bucs are really liking what they're seeing out of him in that position, and that
makes him the number 2 corner.
It does. So that'll be something to look at, at this game coming up here on Sunday. So that's all the headlines that I had for this week. Ren, do you got anything else you want to talk about?
No, like you said, it was very slow news week.
Yep.
Just not a lot out of the players' interviews. Mm-hmm. A lot of the same speak you sort of heard after the game Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Have to keep it going. We haven't won anything yet. That sort of talk. It was interesting. We didn't bring up was how Dirk Cutter's interview on Thursday didn't show up. I mean, he didn't have one. Apparently, he walked in there, waited for a little while. He was a little early. Not all the meeting members were there. And then, just basically said, okay, no questions, bye. But he sat there for 10, 15 seconds and waited.
Mm-hmm.
So that never, that wasn't up on Buccaneers.com. And then when he fielded Jameis Winston questions today, on Friday is always on field after practice interview. The video of that is not up on Buccaneers.com, but they did tweet out a transcript of the interview, so you could, read the questions, read the answers, but they redacted the Jameis question, because I did see on Twitter Dirk Cutter answering the, hey, I got to ask, buddy, what's up with Jameis?
Yeah.
And it was very, what you expected him to say, someone in his position, we as a team are going to make a statement. We're aware of the allegations, and, something will come out shortly. That's all he can say.
Right.
Like we talked about when we talked about Jameis, it's a very fluid situation. And we wake up tomorrow, the situation could change 180 degrees. We'd be looking like, we could really have pie on our face, or we could look like we knew exactly what we were talking about.
Right.
Are you yawning?
Do what?
Are you yawning?
Hey,
Am I boring you, McFly?
No, not at all. This is our, for those a little peek behind the curtain, this is late on Friday that we're getting this out for Saturday morning. So,
that's and you got to wake up early. I just thought it was a little weird that now Buccaneer.com is sort of censoring their videos.
I'll be honest, I don't like it. At the same while I understand why they would do that, I don't understand, because it's not like it was a revealing question. It's not like it was he said the team will issue a statement about it later. Like, why censor that kind of a question other than we don't even want to bring it up? Like, what are we going to go back in years down the road and come back and watch this press conference and go, oh, that's going to drag something up? No, like, I just don't understand why they would even go through that effort.
And to be fair, we don't know that that's the reason they didn't put the video up.
That is very true.
It could have been the camera might have been broken.
The audio wasn't working.
That might. Yeah. But then once again, we have the proof of earlier when he snapped at Roy Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
That video was pulled from Buccaneers.com. That presser.
Sure.
It was put up and then later pulled. So we do have a little bit of a status quo for the way things they don't and do not put up. And quite frankly, I'm not really comfortable with it. And plus last week, even after a win, they didn't have the live video feed of the after game pressers. of Fitzpatrick and Cutter.
No, they didn't have the live video feed?
Mm-mm.
Interesting, because I wouldn't have known that because I got to listen to it on the radio. They were playing it on the radio as I was driving away. Though, come to think of it, I'm not 100% sure that was live. Like, that could have just been a recorded audio, and then they were playing it back on the radio at some, it wouldn't have been too much. It would have been 10, 15 minutes after, but I thought it was live. But anyway, weird, very interesting. They just might be having, I don't know. I don't know.
Very fluid video situation.
Yeah. It's
going on
but I mean, it's that's the whole thing. Like, okay, so it didn't happen. It's kind of, the thing on Thursday where Cutter, like, first of all, Cutter walked in early, or they announced that he was coming in about 20 minutes early. They usually, when they say, hey, Cutter's on his way in, they still have about 4 or 5 minutes before he's actually there. And apparently he was there like 20 seconds after. Yeah. And so, like, to just say that the media guys didn't show up, that wasn't the case. They just were still in the process of making their way over and didn't have any reason to hurry outside of what they knew. And so he just came in, nobody's here, all right, I'm leaving. It's a little
there
funny.
were people there.
Right,
though.
But nobody said anything to him.
Well, and that's your cue to leave.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen it before.
Sure.
It's just the new, sort of the new twist on it was early and not everybody was really there yet. But I've seen where, coaches, players, and okay, like, oh, hey, nothing, and then they attempt to walk away, and then I think I've even seen Cutter do it.
Yeah.
We'll come in and it's like 2-3 seconds and nothing. He's like, okay, I guess that's it, and then somebody will speak up.
Sure.
And then he gave
nobody
extra
spoke
time.
up. Yeah.
And then he gave extra time, longer than he normally did, and he's like, okay then. And then he left. So
right. Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, we talked about this a little bit on the One Short Day at One Buc Place, where I got to spend a day there with the media.
Yeah.
Remember, Cutter's coming in right off the practice field, and when he walks in, you may not be able to see this on the video. I see it now because I know that it's there, but he is sweaty and he is hot. And he is uncomfortable, and he wants to change his clothes. And he's drinking that bottle of water because he's thirsty, Like, so there's a bit of me that doesn't blame him. Like, he walks in, look, you guys ain't ready for me? All right, deuces, I'm out. I got to go change. I got to take a shower. I got to do something. I'm hungry. I want to, like, because it's like 3 o'clock, somewhere there in the afternoon. Like I get it, and he comes in, and that's the other thing. You're going to bring somebody in who's hot, who's thirsty, who wants to go shower, and then you're going to pepper him with a bunch of questions. He might get a little salty at you, like.
Yeah, and it has been reported, and I haven't seen any behavior to, bring up the contrary, that he's not the biggest fan of the media, and it's not personally, it's them in general, and he has said it before. He's like, I think it was his exit presser last year where like, what have you learned? He was talking about how many things are on his plate, and he has to learn to manage his time better because he wants more one-on-one with the players. He wants to be in the quarterback room a little more, that type of deal. And during that sort of explanation, someone said, well, what can you cut back on? And he's like, well, I wish I could cut back on this.
Right.
He's like I got to talk to you guys almost every day. There's like 20 minutes that I could save. So he's made no bones that he's not a fan of the media. He understands they have a job, and it's nothing personal where, I really dislike that person. Maybe it's forthcoming, who knows? But
it does feel like in the past few weeks there might be a little bit of more personal stuff towards certain members of the media. His answers seem to be a little more chippy with certain people versus others. It just seems that way. But you know what that is, Ren, is that's you and I looking at a situation, kind of having this little bit of a narrative going on, and interpreting motives on top of that,
Yeah.
And so, to be fair, we don't know what Cutter's really thinking. It just sort of seems that way.
But I think it is fair to say that he gives a more leeway to certain members of the press than he does others.
He absolutely, yes. It definitely comes off that way for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that is literally us talking about not having news.
Where'd we go?
2 out of 3 days this week.
Do we do 20 minutes?
Let's round this out.
We could do Buccaneers podcast, but anything.
We really
so
could.
Blue or red Gatorade? Hour and a half later. All right, that's gonna wrap it up.
You're listening to the Pewtercast. This is episode 41 of our Gatorade special.
Yeah. How cold is too cold?
In Tampa. For the record, 63 degrees. That is the answer. All right. Let's move on to the injury report. Let's start with Miami Dolphins. They have 4 people who are listed as questionable. They have nobody who is listed as out. The biggest name on this whole list was, and I never say this guy's name right, Ndamukong
Sue.
Yeah, that
just
guy. Sue.
Ndamukong Sue.
I should know. That's my mother's name. He did not participate Wednesday practice or Thursday practice, but was full participation today and is not even listed on the status report. So he will absolutely be playing. They have their own cornerback who's a Bobby McClain. Did you know that?
I do now. I see it.
Yeah, they have their own. Only he's actually Bobby McClain. Ours is Robert McClain, but we call him Bobby.
Bobby Mack.
But other than that, Kenny Stills, who did not participate today and was limited yesterday, he is listed as questionable. That's significant to me because he's on my bench for a fantasy team that I have. So, he doesn't go, fine, whatever. Sinoris Perry, who's a running back for them, full participation, did not participate earlier this week. He is questionable. And then a defensive end for them, William Hayes, was full participation the last 2 days of this week, and he is still listed as questionable. So, looks like they'll have at least the full run of their squad, probably.
Yeah. The only 2 players that I think might not go is Kenny Stills because he wasn't even listed Wednesday, so he must have done something Wednesday, like tweaked a hammy or something.
Right. Limited
Thursday, and then didn't go Friday. Listed as questionable. So that's going to be probably a game time decision on him. It's his back, actually. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. And the other one's safety, their safety, Michael Thomas, who was just the only person whose status didn't change. Right. He was just limited Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and now he's questionable. So I think everyone else, is going to go. That can go. Obviously they got to sit 7 guys. Mm-hmm. But so Kenny Stills and Michael Thomas. But, their secondary is not very good. And unfortunately, they do have a pretty good receiving core, but they don't really have anybody that can get them the ball consistently. So.
And as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, our beloved Buccaneers, this is actually a pretty clean injury report. We have the 3 guys that will be out that we already know of. Jameis Winston is still out with the shoulder injury, did not participate all week. Vernon Hargreaves is out due to the hamstring. He is out. William Golson is still out with that neck. We still don't really know what that was. A stinger, I think, is what most people are saying it was.
Yeah. I don't know.
But there is a report from earlier this week that he was out running. He was running with one of the conditioning coaches or something over on a far field. So he is around, he is back. They're seeing him do stuff. He's just not participating yet with football drills. That said, there's lots of other people who are on the injury report for this week, but they were all listed as full participation by Friday, and they are all at a go status. They will be playing, and that would include people from last week: Robert Ayers, DeMar Dotson, Bobby McClain, who's been out for a couple of weeks. He's back, full participation all week long. Gerald McCoy, J.R. Sweezy, those guys are all going to be playing. So outside of the guys that we already knew about, we've got a pretty good injury report ourselves.
Yeah. These are 2 really clean injury reports for Week 11. I got to say that because 2 guys we knew were out like Monday. Mm-hmm. Like we knew Golson and Jameis were out. Mm-hmm. So really, the only person was Jameis.
And truthfully, we probably knew Hargreaves was going to be out when he went out in the game with a hamstring. Like at this point, if I hear somebody goes down with a hamstring, I just assume that they're out for the next
4 weeks,
4 or 5 weeks, or longer. I mean, you just assume that.
It all depends on what kind of hamstring injury it is, because Dotson got a hamstring, and he hasn't missed a game yet. Mm-hmm. That's what his injury report is. And all ties so receiver, safety, corner, running back. Those hammies seem to be, obviously are a lot more important than your left tackle. Mm-hmm. your starting,
Right.
offensive left tackle. So I feel you. Yeah, it's all, what kind of hamstring it is. But yeah, usually if one of those, quote unquote skill positions guys go down with a hammy, you're looking probably at 4 weeks.
I will say this, a lot of these guys were limited on Wednesday and Thursday, limited. Everybody went full participation today. In the final practice before the game, they all went, I don't want to say balls to the wall, but I mean, no restrictions. Like it seems like that, some of these guys, had carryover injuries from the week before. They might have really just been their limited status might have just let them be resting a little bit throughout the course of this week. And now they're really hitting it. They're really getting ready for this game, which I for one love. We talked about it last week. Whatever they did to prepare for the Jets game last week, I want them to do it again this week. Like whatever they're doing in practice, whatever.
Only defensively.
Yes, we want them to be better offensively. That's very true. Very true. Thank you for pointing that out. But to, come in and play and be ready to go for this game. And, the fact that they went full participation outside of the people who were just going to be out, I personally like seeing that. Other than that, I guess the only thing we have left, Ren, is our predictive inactives for the game. We know that Golson, Winston, and Hargraves will be out. We're looking for 7 people. I think this is going to be kind of a same old faces type of week. I
believe so.
In Holly, he has been out inactive every single week. Auclair, who's been out most every single week. Leonard Wester probably will be inactive as well. And then Silver Salinga.
Yep. I'm right there with you.
Yep. All right, my friend. Well, that is going to wrap up Buck in the news. You got anything else here before we head out?
No, I think that's it. We've had our Jameis talk. It was weird. Like I was talking about that Bobby Mack thing and where they're going to put Ryan Smith, and that sort of popped in my head with the halfway talking about it was we're going to find out, Sunday if Ryan Smith is the second best corner, or at least ranked the best and second corner, on the defense. And, the Bucs have had cornerbacks, sort of rotating on the bottom half of the practice squad, but I am, I'm all about, the side stories.
Sure.
Yes, I love the game and watching the game, but it kind of makes me happy because that's the kind of thing I like is a Golson coming on, that cornerback from Pittsburgh. I've really been watching him carefully, and I hope, which no one asked this week, but I hope next week people start asking about, asking Coach about Golson and sort of. I want to hear what their take as an organization is on him. Is it just that he's been snake bitten, they think he's a really good player, or is it just, well, we're a little thin at that position and we need bodies? I want to hear like what their hopes are for this guy. Is this something like, hey, this could be, something. This could be a Cameron Brate. This could be an Adam Humphries, or is this just, we're just trying to get the best body that's walking around we can at cornerback.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're thin on bodies as far as what they would normally go into with a game, because they've got Brent Grimes, Ryan Smith, Bobby McClain, JV and Elliott, right?
Right.
So that's a normal rotation that we would normally have. You can always, you always want the guy on the practice squad that you're trying to develop and see if they're going to come up. They may or may not.
But it is a position that they're always trying to improve.
It is. And
at least during the light era.
And considering that this guy's a former second-round draft pick, say what you will about him being, unavailable and being injured, that's still a pretty decent position to be drafted in. So, it's going to bode well. And certainly, we're looking down the road. We're looking down the future. This is Brent Grimes' final year of his contract. What does that look like for him next year? And the other thing too, as you were saying, it makes me think of is, the draft class for 2016, last year's draft class, has people. One of the storylines this year is all of a sudden that draft class is looking like a not really good draft class, right? Like Vernon Hargraves is getting busted down to nickel from an outside cornerback. So that, that's a first round pick. Everybody's freaking out over that. And then our second round pick of Aguayo, he's not with us anymore. Noah Spence can't stay healthy. Then we have Ryan Smith at cornerback. We drafted him really to be a safety, but that didn't work out. So we're putting him back at cornerback. So who knows what he's going to do? Well, it looks like he's actually earning his spot, right?
Yeah.
And then one dude's not with us anymore. Vitali. Yeah. And then was that everybody? I feel like there's one more person. It doesn't matter.
So do I.
Yeah, there was somebody else. But anyway, so Ryan Smith might kind of be the savior of the 2016 draft class. Oh yeah, Beninock. He's still around. He's up and coming.
He's active.
He's active. Yeah.
He's the next guy up.
He's the Pamphil of a couple years ago.
He's the next guy up.
So
yeah, I mean, and honestly, I know, if you look at rounds 1 and 2, yeah, you can go, well, geez, this really isn't working out.
Mm-hmm.
But if Vernon, even if he does stay at nickel, but plays enough and gets signed as gets another contract with the Buccaneers and still at nickel, and then Ryan Smith becomes one of the other outside nickels. I mean, finding 2 quote unquote starting cornerbacks in a draft, that's no small feat.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad. And then, and listen, if Noah Spence comes back and he, can keep that shoulder popped in place,
which all reports say is going to.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently there's a little narrative out there that the first surgery wasn't done correctly or was basically considered a failure. It's not more like, hey, your shoulder's, misshapen and it's chronically going to pop out the rest of your life no matter what you do or what we do. It was more of, the surgeon sort of botched your surgery there, and we're going to get it right this time.
Mm-hmm. So, if he comes back and he can be, productive, he's certainly struggled with productivity, especially once his shoulder got re-injured this year. Struggled more this year than he did last year being injured. So, hopefully he comes back and they can help save this whole thing. So, all that said, but here's the deal, Ren. The good news about all of this? We may have to wait. Well, we may have to wait till Sunday to find this out, but we'll be able to talk about this stuff Sunday night. With the Instant Cast, guys, I want to just plug that real quick. You guys join us Sunday night after the game, 9:00 is our regular time at mixler.com/thepewtercast. You guys can join us live. You can actually call in and tell us your thoughts on the game. We'll interact with you there. You guys can call in live to do that. But, we've been plugging it for a couple weeks, Ren. The chat room. The chat room is really where it's at during the Instant Cast.
Yeah, it's really starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
Some of the people in the chat room call in. Most do not.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really cool about it, it's same game day.
Mm-hmm.
With Buck fans where they can sort of chit chat back and forth and bounce ideas what happened and who had a good game and who had a bad game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like a totally they're not even really paying attention to what we're saying. Like they're there to talk among Bucs fans, and it's really a cool thing.
Yeah.
And
but
I don't know if
they'll listen to it in the podcast feed later.
Yeah. No, but I think it's really cool that that this idea where it's like, hey, come in the chat room and talk to us and we'll comment on it, has turned into this thing where Bucs fans can sit there and vent or celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real easy. Did you talk about how you can just download it on your phone?
Not yet. Yeah. If you guys want to go back, you can certainly subscribe to us on iTunes, Podcast Addict, Podbean, Stitcher, Jabbercast, Overcast, Autocast, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Basically any podcasting platform that's out there, you're going to find us on it. You guys can subscribe. We'll download right to your phone. You guys can listen to the Instant Cast. We have 3 shows a week that come out. We have the Instant Cast following the game with our immediate thoughts. Then in the midweek, we have our final thoughts where we've kind of gotten to simmer on it a little bit, and we'll wrap up the game. And then, of course, we have this show right here, The Buck in the News, where we'll take a look at the headlines over the course of the week and review the transactions and injury reports as well. So lots of content coming at you. You guys can check it out. Keep up with us. And, we've got a great ecosystem of Buccaneer podcasts out there. So hopefully you guys are checking those out as well. So, Ren, why don't you tell the fine people out there where they can get a hold of you if they'd like to talk with you about anything you've said here on today's show?
on today's show, or
on
just
any
in
show,
general,
any show, in general.
or just in
Sure.
general. We don't have to talk. We don't have to talk Jameis Winston for the next 3 days. It's okay.
I was thinking you talked Vernon Hargraves, but
I tried to open with that. Easiest way and the best way is on Twitter. Facebook is dead. At Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football. Now, I used to say if 140 was enough, you can DM me, which you still can. But now with what is it, 280 now?
Yeah, 280.
Yeah, you got to find hard pressed not to be able to express your one complete thought.
Mm-hmm.
In that.
Yeah. And there's no rule that you have to use all 280 characters either. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
I think we've all done it once, though.
We had to do it the first time, right? Just to see how long it actually went. If you guys want to get a hold of me personally, I am at Brent Allen Live on Twitter. And you can also find me on Facebook because Facebook is alive and well. Facebook.com/Brent Allen Live. I've got a couple of podcasts you guys can check out with us over there. That's where you'll find all that information.
Oh, that's
You
right.
can connect with the show at the Pewtercast on Twitter, Facebook.com/the Pewtercast, or shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We love getting to interact with you guys, and we really make it a point to try to respond to every piece of information that's out there. So with that, Ren, we got the Bucs playing the Dolphins in Miami, 1 o'clock on Sunday. You guys can check that out. If you're going to go to the game, awesome. I'm jealous. I wish I could go with you guys, but I'll be watching it from my couch. But with that, we'll talk to you guys on Sunday night with the Instant Cast, or you can download us on the podcast feed, which come out pretty close to after the show is over. So until then, Ren, we'll close out the show saying what we always like to say at the end. Go Bucs.